Hello.
Hello.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon for you guys.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm fine. And you?
We're good. I'm Julia, and this is Viola.
Yeah.
So we are working on this documentary, and we found your blog, and we thought it was super interesting. We would love to ask you some questions about like your practice and stuff, if that's okay with you.
Yeah. Go ahead. Ask away.
Yeah. Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Like, how did your interest in the like occult start? And how
Sure. No problem. My full name is Morino Ravenberg. First name Morino, last name Ravenberg. I got started in the occult. Honestly, it's like a natural calling because I have nothing else really that interests me or that I could do essentially for a living or otherwise. And I simply started out. The primary motivational factor would be essentially dealing with life issues or life-related issues, specifically pertaining to mental health, and just doing away with overall negativity. And that also applies to most people. Most people that have an interest in the occult, they have usually their lives are filled with pain and misery just outright, just really a lot of negativity, and they see the occult as an easy way to solve all these problems.
Yeah.
But with me, I didn't view it as such. With me, it was literally just a complete way of life. And in the beginning, especially, I struggled a lot, but I would not relent. I simply wouldn't quit. And I've been doing this for how long? I'm a fast-paced kind of person. So for me, 1 year equals 10 years. That's how fast-paced I am. I really live really fast. So I've been doing this for 6 years. 60 years, essentially, by my standards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you, is your family also interested in the occult?
In the occult?
Yeah.
Yes, as a matter of fact, yeah. This is something that I generally speaking, it is available on my content online, my website and my YouTube channel. Generally speaking, I generally speaking don't bring this up, especially to the average person for the sake of shielding them. Because a lot of people view it as dirty laundry and just general a sensitive subject.
Yeah.
But yes, my family was also heavily invested in the occult. And let's just say I found myself when I was born in a position and growing up where I was essentially on the receiving end of a lot of negativity coming from the occult. And yeah, that did definitely not do any favors for me. And it led to a very, very unpleasant childhood filled with negativity and compromises. And as I grew up, I became self-aware when I became a teenager, and I started rebelling relentlessly. And I also started reading up and learning how everything works and how everything just functions regarding the occult. Another thing that I need to bring up is that the biggest problem is that there is a lot of misinformation out there. You have several conflicting sources for people that claim to be sources. And the general way to recognize all of this is that usually these people cannot explain or elaborate exactly on the reason for why they're saying what they're saying. But most people just automatically take it at face value. And if you've got one person saying A, the other person says B, the other person says C, then if you're someone that's genuinely interested, you're not going to know who to believe and what to do. And as a result, you're just going to be lost.
Yeah.
I had all of those issues when I first got into the occult, but how I got out of it is that I literally just sorted everything out for myself.
Yeah, because we wanted to ask you that as well. Like, where did you find your information? Like other people with the same interest? Is there like a big community?
Yes. Okay. The occult community is very polarizing. The majority of people, like I said, that have an interest in the occult at a global level, does not matter which country they come from. It does not matter. They belong to the lowest class of society. These people are usually severely mentally ill. They have severe psychological issues. These people are usually struggling immensely financially. And you essentially have people that, for example, try to do ridiculous things such as win the lottery through the occult, or they have an interest in such. A typical get-rich-quick scheme. And of course, I despise these kind of people. I absolutely despise them. And I was a part of Facebook groups, every group you could think of. This was 2012, a decade ago, literally a lifetime ago for me. And I simply got fed up with everything because essentially you trying to ask for legitimate information to someone that is allegedly an expert in that field is the equivalent of asking a corrupt politician a question and expecting a direct answer. All they do is they just beat around the bush. They talk around it, but they don't give you a direct answer. And when you press the issue, you're going to get either disdain, you're going to get agitation. And I said to myself, okay, so I don't have to expect anything legitimate from you in the way of an answer. So I'm already seeing that I have to figure things out myself. And I did so. It took me a year to figure everything out myself, but I simply wouldn't give up. And I essentially broke everything down and I created my own system based on existing material, existing content. And I tailored it, I customized it to my needs. I said to myself, listen, I care majority of my practice, or not the majority, everything is focused. Okay, at the very least, the majority is focused on results. At the end of the day, results matter. Otherwise, everything you're doing is for nothing, honestly.
Yeah.
But so do you feel like there are a lot of different groups in the occult community against each other with different beliefs?
Yes, most definitely. It's very polarizing. As the saying goes, a house divided is a house that cannot stand long or last long. And the occult community, I do have an article on that called The Occult Community, and I have several videos. Mm-hmm. And the reason that the entire community including at a commercial level, is so toxic is because it's essentially both consumers as well as producers have a tendency to be unreliable and untrustworthy. Mm-hmm. On the one hand, you have, for example, people that are interested in consuming content to the point where they would, for example, buy wares and buy products from others. But they have a very negative mentality and or attitude. They essentially, if they don't beg for things for free, they want it at a ridiculously discounted price, like 80% off, or something to that extent. And they will not hesitate in general. Not all of them are like that, but let's just say the majority, 70 to 80% of them, will not hesitate to just outright deceive you. Okay, they'll try to scam you, and this is coming from consumers, this is coming from buyers, not from sellers. Yeah. And on the other hand, sellers are also like that. So the one triggers the other, because even if a seller is legitimate, of course, I'm not like that. But I know what the average, the majority of them are like. I'm an exception, like a ridiculous exception at that. But I know all of them. I've seen it firsthand. And most of these sellers, that's why you have a lot of scammers, as they like to call them, on the market. And even if you're someone that was legitimate, if you're someone that already had questionable morals, it was like 50-50, and you come across buyers like that, you're going to say to yourself, no, forget about it. Why would I be honest when these people can't be honest with me? I mean, if my clientele, if my customers, they want to try to do things like deceive me, and they want essentially things for free, why would I bother being honest? They deserve to get scammed.
Yeah.
And it just goes up and down. Yeah.
Yeah. would you say, as in your profession, like how does like a day's work usually look, or what does your work consist of?
Well, what work consists of all depends on you as a practice. There are different kinds. There is necromancy, which involves working with the dead. Mm-hmm. You have witchcraft, which involves working with any spirit you can think of or any energy you can think of. The same goes for Wicca, but witchcraft and Wicca are more nature oriented. So the majority of people that practice witchcraft or Wicca, they work with elemental spirits, or they work with nature oriented spirits, or spirits that fall under the alignment of nature overall, or one of the elements. And for the rest, you have Western ceremonial magicians. I would say that's the closest you can come to in terms of classifying me. And ceremonial magicians specifically work with magic from Western occultism, from the Western culture, which involves working with angelic and with demonic deities.
Yeah.
And the basics are that you need to familiarize yourself with how should I put it, with the spiritual. The same way that people have physical senses, eyesight, smelling, hearing, all of that. Okay, you need to learn how to do all of that, but at a spiritual level. The whole concept is that you are capable of seeing and hearing spirits and everything.
Yeah.
Once you've done so, from a neutral perspective, that's not hard, honestly. Once you've done so, and then you're simply ready to get to work, and that's how the mechanisms start. It's no different, honestly. This is doing business, honestly, or just global trade is something that is existential in nature. So spirits are also no different. You want to work with an entity. The entity expects some form of payment in the form of energy. Nothing is free in this world.
Yeah.
You want something, that spirit will essentially give you what you want, or at the very least do his or her or its best to get you what you want within the context that you want it or how you want it to the best of his ability. But he expects payment in return. So it's the same concept as simply buying something from a seller online. You come to a delivery time, as in how long is it going to take before I get what I want, essentially, and how much is it going to cost. And generally speaking, that's the same. It's the same thing in terms of how you would work.
Yeah, and what sort of payments could it be?
Payments primarily consist of offerings. For example, if you work with the spirit for wealth, as in financial prosperity, then your so-called payments, which is called offerings, will consist of things similar to your intentions. For example, think of luxury items such as precious metals and minerals, gold, silver, platinum, you name it. The general rule is that what you give is what you get in terms of effort. So the more effort you put into your gifts, doesn't necessarily have to be expensive or have to be something of such a nature, but it has to be something where you show to that entity that, hey, you really care. The same way that, for example, if you were to be married to someone, you were to create, for example, a necklace with their picture in it or their name engraved. Something that when they receive it, your significant other will say, hey, the person really, they're going to be happy because they saw how much effort you went through to get all of that done. Okay, to actually cultivate all of that. And it's the same thing. A spirit, one of the most important spirit currently, or the spirit that enjoys the highest priority at the moment, but by default, he is one of the most important spirits that I work with, is an archangel. And he specializes in wealth. And I have around $20,000 or euros in terms of offerings on his altar.
Yeah.
So do you remember your first when you first got in contact with spirits and saw?
Yeah, the first successful interaction. Yeah, definitely. The spirit that
a child, or was it in when you were adult age?
Oh, you mean, I'm sorry, you mean literally the very first time I noticed any kind of anything of a spiritual nature?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, that was, yeah, indeed. It was when I was, yeah, a child, essentially a teenager. And it was in the house that I grew up in. So the house that I still lived in with my parents. And of course, it wasn't in a good way. Before I did what I did, before I was an occultist, I um I had a good deal of contact with spirits, but they usually were not of a good nature. They were spirits that bothered me and pestered me and simply caused overall misfortune.
Yeah.
So think of more a haunting. That's what it was like, and it was not pleasant, obviously.
Yeah. Okay. But the first time you yourself managed to like summon, or your first experience?
Yeah. Yeah. The spirit that, generally speaking, enjoys the highest of priority to me is also an archangel, and he is more destructive in nature, both in a good way as well as in a bad way. He is the only archangel that is dualistic in the sense that he is both good and bad.
Yeah.
And this angel, people that are familiar with the Bible, especially the part of where the Egyptian Pharaoh would not let Moses and the rest of the Jews go, and as a result, every firstborn child was killed. And that angel is responsible for killing every firstborn child.
Yeah.
That angel is the angel that I essentially looked up to. He embodied everything that I wanted to be in terms of me wanting power, and specifically destructive power, and to be able to use it towards my own ends, whether it be for good or for bad. And yeah, he was the first spirit that I successfully summoned, and he stayed true to his nature, and it was incredibly intense. It just was an outright haunting, honestly. Everything from the ground beneath my feet shaking to lightning inside my very own apartment. It was really intense, to the point where the average person would just immediately shut everything down. But I was only intimidated, honestly. I was briefly reluctant, but then I reminded myself that, hey, I'm the one that sought out this power. I have myself to blame. So I'm the one that wanted this. So I'm not backing down. I'm not going down. I literally wanted this. So I just essentially welcomed him completely. Okay. And I showed that I wasn't afraid. I wasn't anything. And everything went successfully from that point on. Everything immediately changed for the better. I was capable of immediately undoing a lot of negativities from my life. That spirit immediately offered me a tremendous level of protection, both spiritually as well as physically. I noticed a lot of bad things that used to happen to me in the way of misfortune not happening anymore. And I just embraced it fully, and I said, yes, this is what I wanted. And I haven't looked back since, honestly. With this spirit, I managed to destroy near countless enemies of mine. I mean, I have a lot of people that I dislike that you can truly classify as an enemy. And I really just managed to do so much with this spirit. That's why he's still, up to present day, he is still my number one. And the one that deals with wealth is essentially my number two.
Yeah. Okay. Should we take the...
yes, we were wondering a bit about like materialism in the occult, because we read a review that was about a person writing about objects the person had bought on eBay, and that so we were just wondering a bit how you spoke about it a bit earlier, but a bit more if you think that there are some material things that actually has a worth, and if you yourself own any.
I'm sorry. If specifically,
is there any type of like items that can help you in your practices, or many things in like you can buy on eBay and they say commercial?
Yeah, they call those implements. Yes, within the occult, they call those implements magical implements.
Yeah.
Things like amulets, talismans. That's what you mean. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, those things are, generally speaking, if you yourself practice, then those things are symbolic in nature. They essentially represent a certain aspect of your practice, especially if you're a beginner. But once you're past the beginner stage and you have become an adept or an expert, then you yourself will catch on to the fact that these things aren't really necessary, because they do just that. They represent their symbolism. They're an extension of your intentions. And when you're past the beginner stage, you already know what your intentions are, and you don't need something material to actually reflect that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you were wondering, people that do not practice and they buy enchanted items online, like an amulet or a talisman, that is an item that is, I, for example, can also do so easily. I have a video on it because a customer of mine asked me to record it. They made a request. And I said, yeah, okay, because it was a subject that I hadn't covered yet. If the seller is legitimate, the seller isn't a scammer, then yes, it will be legitimate as well. And how those objects work is that they have a certain amount of energy, spiritual energy attached to them. And you as a consumer, if you buy it, okay, you need to keep the item with you. You either need to wear it or put it in your pocket or similar. Bottom line is you need to have it on you, at the very least most of the time, all if not most of the time. And the energy will automatically essentially manifest within your own life. And you will get the results, or you're supposed to get the results that you were aiming for. And how it's charged is it's like charging a battery. It depends on you as a practitioner. For example, if someone asked me to charge a ring of theirs, as in, hey, I have a wedding ring, can you charge it? Yeah. I can ask one of the spirits that I work with to charge it, as in I put it on their altar, and the spirit tells me, okay, I'll be done in a week. You can simply take it back in a week and give it to the person. Or I can charge it using my own energy, and it just goes on. Especially practitioners of, for example, witchcraft, they use their own energy, because within the practice of witchcraft, I have courses on all of this, by the way. I have courses on how to practice everything, literally from beginning to end. And these courses are like step-to-step videos, the same way that you see tutorials on YouTube.
Yeah.
And these courses literally tell you everything what you need to do. If you don't know anything, I tell you literally exactly what to do from beginning to end, and I walk you through the entire process.
Yeah, you can find them on your website.
Yes. Okay, in the sidebar, a list of e-courses I sell. I call them e-courses because they're digital courses, obviously. You don't need me to be with you physically.
Okay.
How it works is that you buy the course, and all the material is located therein, and I walk you through the entire process. If you have any questions, you simply reach out to me through one of my many contact options. Anyways, as I was saying, in witchcraft, for example, rather than work with spirits, some people that practice witchcraft, what they do is that they generate energy. And how that works is that when you go past the basics, you learn, one of the basic things you learn is how to manage energy, how to generate it. And you don't, from a mainstream perspective, it is understandable, because you don't need to be into the occult. You don't need to be knowledgeable. Something as simple as rubbing your hands for 5 minutes, if you have ever done that, you notice that you're generating energy. You're generating electrical static, okay? And your hands become warm. It's the same thing, but at a spiritual level. And you can generate energy, and you can essentially guide that energy towards any object, which includes an item. So if a person says, I want your energy to be attached to my wedding ring, I can easily do so. I generate energy. I'll barely need like a minute, and that's it. The person's ring has energy. Of course, similar to water and whatnot, most forms of energy, all if not most of them, they evaporate. It's not consistent. It has a lasting effect that can be expressed in a time period or a duration. It can take a week, and then all of a sudden, you will know this meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Yes, I wanted to ask you about, you had an article about colonialism and like the occult, and like how that has affected the view of it.
Colonialism as in when, for example, the third world was colonized. You mean in that context?
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I do indeed. I remember that. I remember, especially with European colonialism, when European powers were busy expanding, it was, I think, between the Middle Ages and 19th century. So think 17th, 18th century. For example, the British, the Dutch, and the French. Think Napoleon's era, think the era of when the United Kingdom was still Great Britain, and it just goes on. When they essentially had several areas, territories around the world that they colonized, and then they resettled slaves and plantation workers and whatnot. A tactic that was generally speaking applied. Let me see. Colonialism is that they. Yeah, just ignore that.
Yeah, no worries.
You heard that, right? You've got mail. Let me see. I briefly need to visit my own website because I need to see exactly what I wrote because I have so much on my mind and so much to think of that even I don't keep track of it. But that's why I write these articles.
Yeah, that's completely fine. Take your time.
Yeah. Colonialism. Oh yeah, why was occult phenomenon dismissed in history? Oh yeah. No, now I remember this. Yeah, I just need to see it really. Yeah, no. The thing is that, for example, everywhere in the world you have occult activity, you have paranormal activity, because everywhere in the world you have spirits around you, and that includes the spirits that come from events, etc. Events that were intense in nature, sometimes, especially when it comes from a negative place. Think World War One, World War Two. A lot of, for example, soldiers that died on the battlefield in gruesome ways. Generally speaking, these soldiers, they can't find peace really, and they end up wandering the material world as spirits, and more than a few people see them, for example. And you had the same thing in these former colonies, European colonies. And when Europeans settled there, specifically to serve as management of these colonies and to guide the slaves and the other cheap plantation workers and all of that, you had more than a few. You have more than a few occult phenomenon, especially, for example, with deforestation, because forests are inhabited by a good deal of nature spirits that can be destructive in nature. Think the same way that wildlife doesn't like its habitat being cut down, if you will, and you'll run into problems with especially predatory animals. It's the same thing. You have different kinds of nature spirits that will lash out at people that engage in deforestation, as in, hey, you're tearing down my home, so I'm going to wreak havoc on you. And think of, typical movie hauntings, as in all of a sudden some person cuts themselves by accident or shoots themselves or uses a chainsaw and literally decapitates themselves by accident. Stuff that would make for an entertaining horror movie, but that stuff actually also happens in real life. Think of heavy equipment such as bulldozers and whatnot, just stopping out of nowhere without any explanation, you name it. Usually European management would dismiss all of these claims. If, for example, an employee or a slave would tell the foreman or the manager, hey, all the guys are talking, something's really wrong with this place. We're afraid that there's a spirit haunting here and he doesn't want us to cut down that tree. And he usually it's simply waved away as in, nothing but superstitious, you guys and your nonsense, etc. The thing is that management also believed that, because obviously in Europe you have a lot of hauntings and paranormal activity as well. A lot, but they'll never admit it. And in that article, I simply call it psychological manipulation. They simply had a mentality along the lines of, we can't show the employees or we can't show these slaves that we essentially also believe in what's going on. Because if we do so, then that will make us come off as being vulnerable. We need to keep the moral high ground, and we need to not show any kind of relentlessness whatsoever in terms of actually believing what's going on. Otherwise, we admit that they're right. So as a result, that's how the whole concept of superstitiousness of just plain superstition came along. Everybody involved, they knew better. But it's just pretending that, hey, that it's just made up and that it's just another folk tale essentially invented by someone that is seen as inferior or of a lower class.
Yeah. And do you think that's still like that sort of mindset is still present today as well in our culture now?
Not really, honestly. Not really. Usually nowadays when people claim others are being superstitious, because superstitiousness does exist, but superstitiousness is essentially just occult or paranormal delusion. It's when someone has experienced so much paranormal activity that they attribute everything to being paranormal in nature, when that's not the case. Something happens by coincidence and they immediately think, oh my God, the place is haunted. For example, a cup of water falls over in your house and you're like, oh my God, a spirit did it. That's not the case. Okay. It doesn't have to be the case. So no, it's no longer linked to class or classism or anything like that. No. Usually other people that use the phrase superstitiousness are usually people that are adamant on essentially coming into contact with the spirit world or with the paranormal. But ironically, they can't, doesn't matter how hard they try. And even that I explain also on my website and YouTube channel.
Yes.
We read on your website that you had an encounter with Lucifer.
Yes.
So if you want to talk about it, we would love to hear about that experience.
Yes. Let me first start off by saying that a lot of spirits, including Lucifer, that you see in pop media, in, for example, horror movies or in pop culture overall, the majority of it is nonsense. Okay, it's simply made up essentially as a means of entertaining the masses. But the problem is that people, generally speaking, are stupid and they think that that's actually what Lucifer is actually like, or that's actually what Satan is like and whatnot. No, that's not at all the way things work. And that there was some great war in heaven and all of that. No. People do not understand the concept of omnipotence. Okay. Everything that you see in existence is perpetuated by God. Doesn't matter what you want to believe. It does not matter. Okay. God is the one that rules everything. And that includes demons, as you like to put it, as Lucifer, for example. These so-called demons, including Lucifer, Satan, all of them, these were high-ranking angels, just like the angels that I described earlier that I work with, for example, you name it, just like the archangels or similar. And they simply fell from heaven, but there was no real war. Okay, you would use the phrase war is if there was a chance that God loses, so to speak, and that notion is so offensively ridiculous, that would defeat the whole purpose of being omnipotent. So, bluntly put, every being in existence, obviously with the exception of God, is nothing more than a puppet to God, to put it bluntly. We're all puppets, and that includes the spirits, these kind of spirits, and God is the one pulling the strings, metaphorically speaking. So God simply wanted these spirits cast out, and he cast them out, end of story, or he had them cast out. There was no chance that they would ever be able to essentially achieve victory in any way, shape, or form. No. Their fall, including everything else, is perpetuated by the Almighty. And Lucifer specifically is one of those. Lucifer was a high-ranking angel. What else is there to say about Lucifer? Lucifer is incredibly popular for obvious reasons. That is still one of my most watched videos. I think it's like 15,000 views or 12,000 views. A lot of people have watched that video. And for the rest, basic information such as my article and video outlines, like his name being Lightbringer and whatnot, generally speaking, is correct. For the rest, there's nothing really else to say other than just the outright information on him.
Yeah. But there's, what would you say is like the biggest misinformation about like the occult or spirituality that you see in the world? Like, what would you like to?
The biggest form of misinformation or the biggest myth surrounding it, or just plain wrong, is that essentially the occultism does not exist, and that it's simply made up, and that magic doesn't exist, and whatnot. Obviously, that's completely not true. But again, it refers to how the occult world is completely polarized. The people that seek out the occult, pretty much everything that can be wrong with someone under the sun is wrong with them more often than not. They're definitely, you can see them as human parasites, honestly. They're the types that lack virtue in any way, shape, or form. But the occult itself is nothing but virtue. But that's also the way it's supposed to be, because the occult is hidden by default. I mean, the meaning of the word occult itself is hidden. Okay, means that which is hidden. Yeah. The occult is essentially the pot of gold, the metaphorical pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. You need to seriously devote yourself, and you need to be willing to fail more than a few times in order to actually come about anything that's worth something. If you seriously want to come into contact with divinity, you will not find it in mainstream religion. You won't find it anywhere else. The occult is the only place where you'll find true divinity. As in, you seriously want to find a pathway to God, the occult will definitely guide you to that. And once you have come into contact with that power, you will never want to relinquish it or give it up for anything, because then you'll know what true divinity feels like. But like I said, it's not the average person. Definitely is nowhere near worthy of this knowledge and this power. The knowledge and the power are real as they come, but the average person is by no means worth it. Okay, if you want to be worth it, you have to really prove yourself of being worth it, and that means that you have to go really deep down this rabbit hole until you reach the end, and it's going to be very unpleasant. And of course, like I said, most people. The problem is that most people, you know, they're shallow and superficial. They look at something once, and if the second that they need to make even the smallest amount of self-sacrifice or just sacrifice for it, they need to put in some effort, immediately they just fall off the map or fall off the radar. They say to themselves, "No, I'm sorry, and it's not worth it," etc., etc. Yeah, that's it.
That makes sense. Okay, so I see that we only have about a minute left before the Zoom call ends. But I was thinking, should we?
I don't.
Yeah, but I think we are done with all the questions that we had for now.
Okay.
And we can like update you on everything, or like, because we're gonna try and get this like on public service in Sweden and stuff, if that would be okay with you.
Yeah, that's completely fine.
And we can update you on anything, and we would love it if you could send us the recording as well.
We'll definitely do so.
And then I want to thank you so much for talking to us. It was super interesting, and really, thank you a lot. Yeah,
no problem. Of course, I need part 1 that you guys recorded as well. If you would like, I can edit it and simply fuse both together, merge both together, so that it's just one whole. I can do so.
Yeah, we can. It's fine. We have editing. We can fix all that.
Okay.
But we can send you the first part if you want, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.